right, episode 31 of the Fuzz Club. We're actually, now that I think about it, we're talking about Fuzz, the album Fuzz by the band Fuzz on the Fuzz Club. So before we get into it too much, let's do some quick intros. Aawks.
Kris from the band Aawks.
I'm Randy.
Bucky just went black, but
I went black. What the hell happened?
Where'd you go?
Oh, there you are.
There you go.
All
Take
right,
some ketamine.
Bucky with the Doom charts, just ripple effect.
Cool. Robb.
Robb, Hashtronaut, foul sounds, and just an overall degenerate.
Eddy.
Eddy with the endless low talk and Aawks.
Degenerate kind of goes without saying. I feel like we could all probably say that. I think that's given.
The Fuzz Club here,
Yeah. All right, so we're talking about the album and the band Fuzz. The band is called Fuzz. This is their self-titled from 2013. It was the project of Ty Segall. It kind of sounded like, from what I was reading, that he wanted to kind of keep his name out of it. They wanted to kind of like go as a band, and he didn't want that to be the thing that everyone latched onto, but it was anyway, just because I think that people follow him kind of with whatever he does. So it kind of ended up being his thing. But the other thing I didn't know was that he was vocals, obviously, but he was the drummer of this. I didn't know that going into it. So that's kind of cool. But very like garage rock, very fuzzy, heavy psych, something or other. But you can hear that Ty Segall sound in it. It just sounds like a really fuzzed out, heavier version of that, like the garage rock version of everything he does, kind of. So anyway, I know that there's some opposing views on this album. It was quite the chat that we had in our Fuzz Club before getting on here. Some people love it, some people not so much. So who wants to start? Who wants to talk about why they feel the way that they do about this album?
Go for it,
Sure,
Kris.
why not? So I suggested it. So I talked a little backstory for me. Like around 2013, they kind of given up on like rock music. I was like into bluegrass and hip hop and all sorts of other stuff. And Ty Segall's Twins album and this album I got around the same time, and they like blew my mind and got me right back into rock. They kind of like reinvigorated my love for all that stuff I'd listened to growing up, like Sabbath and all the 90s stoner stuff and all that kind of stuff. So I spun these, that Twins album, and I spun this album a million times over. I just couldn't get enough of it. To me, it's like all the best parts of like Blue Cheer, MC5, early Floyd, some Sabbath, and then it's kind of like that meets like this energy of the Stooges and some like 80s punk stuff, and all of it sung by John Lennon, like through a bunch of effects, which to me is fucking awesome. I love that.
Yeah.
And and I love the energy. I love like just the drive of it. And I think it's melody meets grooves meets power, simplicity, just all the stuff I love, man. So it nailed like all the check marks for me.
Yeah, I remember one of the things that when I first, because I wasn't super familiar with this. I mean, obviously I've heard of Fuzz, but I didn't know this album front to back. I'm sure the way you do. But in just listening to it, I was just like, there were points where I was like, this sounds like if the Misfits were good at writing songs. Like, I had that kind of, like you said, like that like 80s kind of English punk vibe.
Yeah,
the energy of the punk stuff. But then meets like the proto stoner stuff to me.
Yeah, right? Exactly. Like, yeah, they some of them learned how to actually do more than 3 chords,
Right. And yeah, there's like that kind of live Hendrix feel, like the Band of Gypsies feel to me at times.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing, Matt.
Yeah, and it's like all put up by 3 guys. Like, so go ahead. Sorry, Eddy.
No, I was going to say the same thing, but it reminds me of the Band of Gypsies. Like just in a more of like a juvenile way, like to me, this like feels like a bunch of teenagers from like chemistry class got together and smoked weed for the first time, and like I want to write stoner rock music now, and this is what came out of it. That's what it feels like to me, but it's really cool though.
Yeah, if you follow Ty's work, I mean, he's kind of that person that's always just putting out music, and there's a lot of it, and it always feels like maybe some of it could have been edited out. Like he just puts out everything that he works on. Like if he's, makes an album of 20 songs, like 10 of them I really enjoy, and the other 10 I go like, I'm not sure, if this works or what you were trying to get at or lyrically what you were writing about there, but the other 10 is great. And for this band, like there's some of that where it's like he's still very much Ty, and then just cranked the fuzz and the amps up and just made it like a rock band version of that. And there's a lot here on this album that I think is really great. There's like catchy songs on it and stuff. And then there's some just like noodling, so just some like jamming on there and stuff. And it's just kind of like this window into Ty Segall's work. And this album is just like this heavier version of that in a way.
Yeah,
I didn't know. Like I said, I wasn't hyper familiar with this project. And once I started looking into it a little bit and saw that it was Ty Segall, I was like, oh, okay. Like you can hear it. Like it's definitely there.
What were you saying before we got on? I think it's the Wikipedia. Maybe you remember it better than I do.
Yeah. So kind of like one of my first initial influences is I was like, it kind of sounds like another band that never really played stoner rock or desert rock, like got a Caius record, and we're like, I think we could do that.
Yeah.
And then I read their Wikipedia, and that's kind of what happened.
Yeah, they were like, well, I think we could do this. We could make.
Yeah, they're like, I wonder how hard it would be to write a hard rock record. And then, they put out a couple of 7-inches before this, so they had a little bit of time to refine it, I'm sure. But
yeah,
I know. So Charles Muthart, the guitarist, was writing a bunch of riffs and had that idea. Then he brought them to Ty, and they're both, I know, huge fans of all sorts of different kinds of music. Like I know Ty Segall's interest in music is really deep. He's into some pretty weird and esoteric, like, Psych and really oddball stuff. So I assume I know he's got a Black Sabbath tattoo. So I know he knows who Sabbath is, right? So I think, I don't know if they'd ever actually written that stuff and, had an idea of making it rather than like the garage rocky kind of lo-fi stuff they'd done before. But yeah, I think that was the first time they'd try to make like a hard rock album in that vein.
And one of the mentions here that I find not necessarily interesting, but I guess it's one of those ideas when you say that Ty Segall puts out so much content and so many varied sounds and stuff. With Fuzz, Charles Muthart had mentioned how for this band he did more of the riffs and the song ideas, and Ty enjoyed kind of going along with it, being the drummer, taking more the back seat and adding in thoughts and bits, but it wasn't him forward. It wasn't like Ty stuff like some of his other collaborations where it's all his thought process, his work.
Yeah, there was something I'd read about that too that I thought was kind of interesting. There, he said it was like really the first time that he'd written in a band setting instead of like everybody just having their parts and just kind of, I wouldn't. I'm not trying to say it sounds amateurish, but it definitely kind of sounds like somebody's first try, And like to read that kind of stuff, I was like, oh, it kind of makes a little bit more sense.
Yeah. And they were all taking on a lot of different roles and stuff was kind of how the interview was really giving that kind of idea that whatever you were good at, that wasn't necessarily where you are in that band. It was this nice shared piece that they got to put together, and whether it came out amateurish or like some people
to me,
die for it.
Yeah, and I kind of dig that, like that looseness.
Oh yeah, I'm not even using amateurish in a derogatory way, just
it's raw. It's
raw. I feel like maybe that's a better adjective. Like it's all their older stuff's better. It's just they had that like we were saying, that 80s punk vibe where it's it sounded DIY. It didn't sound like they had like all kinds of this Black Sabbath recording in a castle type shit going on.
Right. Yeah, for sure.
Maybe that's why there's only 3 Fuzz albums, is that collaborativeness. Because if it was Ty leading the ship, maybe there'd be like 10 Fuzz albums.
Right. And that kind of adds to the mystique of it just being this like, when these 3 dudes aren't busy doing the 40 other things they're all busy doing, they get together and they make a Fuzz record,
Yeah, I mean, I touched on his like solo stuff a little bit, and then Fuzz obviously, but there's so much more too. There's one called like Slaughterhouse, I think, and there's one called like White Hen maybe or something. And I mean, he's probably got more that I'm not even aware of. So
Slaughterhouse is pretty good too. It's a lot noisier and less structured, but it's good.
Cool.
Good tones, good guitar, like. layers and timbres.
He's got a thing not for everybody. I don't know how everyone feels on here about him in particular, or if you've even listened to a lot of his stuff or not. But it's it's almost an acquired taste. He, like I said at the beginning, he writes a lot of music. He puts out a lot of music, and you're not going to like all of it. But he's always trying stuff. He's always experimenting. He's always trying to like push himself, his writing a little bit and stuff. And that's what I find interesting about him. And this project's really no different. I like the heaviness to it. I enjoy his solo stuff, but I like the heavier part of Fuzz and him just trying new stuff. And I'll just kind of keep checking it out as he goes, because he's just one of those people that keeps being creative.
I think he's got a really an amazing like phrasing and melodic sense in his vocals that really like goes through all of this stuff. And to me, like, I don't know, if I could write melodies like that, I'd be very happy. Like he's got a real talent. I think he's one of the top guys in the kind of current rock scene for writing, even though he does sound very much derivative from other stuff in the past. I think I really respect his writing.
Yeah. Bucky, what was your thoughts on this? You've been surprisingly quiet on this album.
Yeah, no, I've just been listening to what you guys had to say. I'm kind of in Robb's boat. I definitely familiar with Fuzz. I've kind of watched them throughout the years, but I've not been a hardcore like fan of it. Like I've looked at it, and I'm not a Ty Segall fan either. Like I don't follow him. I'm not in that cult kind of following that he has.
Yeah.
Not saying I don't like some of his stuff, but I don't know much of his stuff, really. I choose not to go down that rabbit hole. But this album, I mean, I think all three albums actually I quite enjoy. I hadn't listened to it in a long time until today. Like I was at work, and I was like, oh, shit, I guess I better listen to it. So I put it on this afternoon, let it play a couple times, and was pleasantly surprised how much more I like it than I remembered. So it's got that it's kind of a cult band, like a classic. The first two Fuzz albums, it's probably because it's Ty Segall.
Mm-hmm.
Like if he wasn't anywhere near this, I don't know that people would really be talking about it like they do.
Yeah.
I mean, he probably is why they're so kind of known.
Yeah.
But yeah, the bass work, I mean, it's got that classic psychedelic, like garage sound plus that punk element. You kind of nailed it, Kris, with your description. It's all those things I agree with. So, and the drumming, like there's a couple like drumming parts I noticed throughout the middle of this and I didn't know that was Ty drumming, but
I didn't either. I mean, I've listened to this album for, I don't know, 6-7 years now. And I mean, I didn't know that he was the drummer, to be honest. So I was like, holy shit, he's just a talented motherfucker, I guess.
Yeah, super talented dude, for sure.
Yeah.
What about like any specific songs? I know like the song, I think it's called "What's in My Head," or is it what?
That was the only one that I really like remembered.
That's definitely the single.
Back on when that one came on, I was like, oh, I remember this. Like,
yeah, that's definitely the single. It's definitely like one of the most well-known songs of theirs, and there's a good reason why. I mean, it's catchy as hell. It's kind of infectious, and
that one kind of had like some like 90s grunge vibes almost in the chord progressions. Like it was like could have been a Smashing Pumpkins song,
Right. Yeah. It's a great tune. I think that there's a real reason why it's one of their more well-known ones. And there's stuff on here too that was very just kind of jammy and experimental and maybe a little long-winded almost.
Yeah, there was one track there was like this like guitar feeding back underneath it the whole time. I don't remember exactly which one, but I remember thinking that one like this one could be over anytime now.
Yeah.
I liked it. I liked the way it opened. The opening track I really dug. Just how it kind of slowly comes in, and then
that little slow walking bass line comes in.
That bass line was killer.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, I there's no low points on the album for me. I like the whole thing front to back. I really dig the instrumental track, the last one. I really like that two-step beat. That kind of punk. I think it's called a skank beat. There's like boochie. I just love that energy that it's got. And I really dig all the like whammy bar work, even though apparently I didn't know that he doesn't use a whammy bar. He just uses his hand behind his bridge, to bend the strings, which is kind of cool. It sounds like a Randy bar to me, but I love that.
It's awesome.
Interesting.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite parts too. I think it was that song 1. There's like a big jammy part there, and some of them, my favorite parts was just like the jam, like the bass and drums rocking out, and the guitar solo. But a lot of times when the vocals were coming in, I was kind of like getting turned off a little bit at times. I was getting a bit annoyed with his voice. But this is my first time hearing this band. I had trouble getting through it the first 2 or 3 tries until today. I listened to it a bit more, and I started kind of appreciating it a bit more.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah.
You could definitely hear like there's a lot of stuff in there. Like you could hear where a lot of bands listen to these dudes and we're like, oh my God, we need to start a band.
Yeah. I think like 10 years ago, like, I would have been like really into this band. But I was into a lot of that.
So I think
jammy and like a hippie kind of vibe that for sure. Woodstock era stuff.
Yeah, that's kind of like what I like to call that like intentional 70s vibe.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
We've touched on a couple things of this album that are, I don't know, not our favorite part of it, but there was a few of us in the Fuzz Club that couldn't make it tonight that absolutely fucking hated this album. So does anybody want to take on the role of them here for a minute and maybe explain why that might be, or why you at least sympathized with that opinion?
I mean, I think like Eddy put it really good. It kind of took me a couple tries to get into it too, and even then, I wasn't really like. It's not that I hate it, but like it kind of, you know, it's pretty derivative of a lot of other stuff, and not even necessarily in a bunch of bad ways, but just in very noticeable ways. And I mean, I could see how somebody who is into heavier stuff could not relate to this because it has a very poppy vibe. The way a lot of the songs work, it's like a poppy version of like a Caius or a, you know, whatever Brant Bjork project is doing. You know, you like it's a much more kind of put together. The harmonies are better. There's just it's kind of a more polished, even though it is kind of raw. It's kind of a more polished version, just in general how it works. And I could see how that could be off-putting.
Yeah. Okay. Well said.
I know one of the criticisms that was stated on the Fuzz Club, I won't out anybody, but was that it was unoriginal. I think there was some more colorful terms used. But to me, like, our whole genre is really unoriginal, right? Like we're all from that source of like maybe 5 bands from this late 60s, early 70s.
Mm-hmm.
And I have no problem with that at all. Like, I think originality is sometimes overrated. And so sometimes it's fucking annoying, actually.
Yeah,
I think that like one of the best like parallels I could probably make would be to like skateboarding. Like anybody can do a fucking kickflip. Like not anybody, but anybody can do a kickflip. But like
I can't.
To be a professional skater and to get like famous, like you have to do a kickflip like with style and do it in a way that nobody else is really doing it, and like pop it a little earlier, catch it a little, you know, just and we're playing the same riffs. So half these bands are all in the same goddamn tuning, for Christ's sake. Like, you know, we're all just, you know, strumming away E minor the whole time. Like, but, I think you can pop it a little earlier, you can catch it a little earlier, and you know, like. And there's a way to do it, and I could see how some people really love the way that this band does the thing that we are all doing.
Yeah.
And I can absolutely see why some people don't.
I think for any band, like there's kind of 2 routes that you can take. One is being completely fucking original, and one is just being really fucking good at that thing, regardless of originality. Right. And some people can do both, and some people are one or the other. But I don't always look for creativity only. I mean, I think that some bands are just really good at the thing that they do, whether it sounds exactly like Caius, you know, 20 years later is irrelevant to me. It's just they did it really good. And then there's some bands that I'm like, this is so fucking creative and so original, and that's why they're an amazing band. And this band is not the most original per se, but I think that they do that thing that they do pretty well.
Absolutely.
And Ty has enough other projects where he's super original anyway, I think, for the most part. So maybe this one was more like, I don't need to be original here. Let's just jam. Let's just rock.
I'll go out and say that I think I like this most out of his. I prefer the derivative stuff he does to his original stuff. Like, and I'm with like what you said, Chris. Like, I'm okay with stuff sounding like stuff from the past, because I've said it before, kind of jokingly, that we've ran out of riffs. Like, there's only so many chord progressions you can do. So it's at some point you have to be willing to admit that, hey, I'm not copycatting anything, but somebody's going to hear something from someone totally different that you may not have known. Like, it's inevitable. So it's like, get over that aspect of it, and just, does it sound good? Are they ripping someone off? Are they assholes, or are they being genuine dudes just trying to play good music? So absolutely. I think this is the case of it's creative. Sounds fuzzy. Like, you crank the fuzz pedal up, it's going to sound like a lot of bands. So
it's one of those albums to me where you kind of just got to enjoy it for what it is. Like, don't try to put too much on it. It's just this like fuzzy, loud record. Like, just enjoy it for what it is. The problem with that is that since Ty's attached to it, people have certain expectations, and if it's not met, or it's not super creative or original, then people, I think that it's easy. It's more of a target for getting, torn apart, maybe.
It's also easy to like keep somebody like that on the outside. Like, he's a pop musician. He can't make a stoner record, he can't make a desert rock record. So it's easy to write somebody like that off for sure. But I mean, the dude is hyper talented. You can't take that away from him.
I think that his Twins album to me is like as close to kind of fuzz. Well, it's very fuzzy, but as close to kind of stoner rock as he got in his solo stuff for me. And he does veer into the garage stuff, into the poppier kind of rock stuff, but it's a heavy album, and it's super thick with fuzz. So I would suggest trying out the Twins album as maybe a gateway to try out some of his other stuff.
Yeah, I don't think I've listened to a lot of his solo stuff. I've seen some. I'm looking at it now.
The most popular stuff,
Yeah.
I have to admit, I don't know anything Ty Segall has put out. It's totally new to me.
A lot of shit out and a lot of stuff.
I've heard his name before a lot, but never listened to it.
I really dig his early like garage rock stuff, and then that middle kind of rocky fuzz, like experimental, like synthy stuff.
I don't enjoy his like acoustic type of stuff as much. I when you mentioned Twins, I remember listening to that one, I think back in the day, and enjoying it a lot. But when he starts doing a lot more acoustic stuff,
that's the kind of the stuff I'm most familiar. Like, when you say Ty Segall, like, that's what I think of, is like that kind of like folk poppy. Yeah, I don't really know what to call it. That dude's just such a fucking weirdo.
It's just weird shit.
Yeah.
Okay.
If I were to criticize the fuzz stuff, it would probably be the vocals, and not that they're horrible. It's just that's probably the weak point for me. And I think you mentioned it, Eddy, too, or something that.
Yeah, it's abrasive. It's abrasive.
Yeah,
for sure.
I mean, and they compared him to what you're talking about, John Lennon. Like, I don't like his vocals either. It's like, and has a similar kind of output of he wrote a ton of music and some genius stuff, but there's also a lot of stuff he did that I don't like. It's just like, I'll take this half and this half can go away. Like, I don't care for it. So
I wanted to bring up the artwork if we want to move on slightly. Just quickly, just for a couple of different reasons. It's not my favorite artwork in the world. I kind of have a thing about like professional albums having kind of amateurish artwork. And like with this one, you can see like marker strokes, and you can see like, I mean, literally like the medium that they used and stuff. It looks like a kid's like Crayola drawing or something. And I don't always love that. I mean, I think it's a cool image and whatever, but it's just something about it kind of drives me nuts. Just being
this doesn't look like the final version.
No, it looks like the sketch that they didn't ever finish or something, and that just drives me nuts. But anyway, it's a cool drawing. It's by Tatiana Cartompton, I think is her name. And anyway,
to me, it's one of my favorite like parts of the whole thing. I fucking love this album cover.
Really?
And it just looks like something that you would like hallucinate on some really good acid or maybe think of, but
it's
but it's like
definitely
a
definitely
version,
psychedelic.
that future modern kind of weird, like hippie tripping thing, right? And
Yeah,
and also kind of looks like the Never-Ending Story a little bit to me.
Yeah, I
it
know.
does.
I
It does
was
for sure. It does for sure. Yeah.
That's what I was thinking of too, like the never-ending story type.
I think that she called it a cosmic creature that adorns its sleeve and an
Yeah.
interstellar monkey dragon.
Jesus. Okay. Okay.
All right.
She also
I
went on to
see.
say it's a psychedelic creature, and when I saw them, it was close to a psychedelic experience. Adding, I was really stoned when I saw them, super super high. So that might have something to do with it.
It's to me, it's a little obnoxious. Although, like, it fits, but it's, if I were to say anything, it's kind of, it's a little obnoxious.
It's a little goofy for me.
Goofy.
Like, I wanted to take it a little bit more seriously for some
I like
reason.
it's psychedelic. I mean, it's like an acid trip kind of image, but
Yeah.
Well, it literally was, right?
yeah.
She created that after. That's trippy. After seeing them, she created it.
Yeah.
I find the match.
There's a couple other sketches she made. Like this is actually like the third or fourth version of this. I think it originally said like Freak below it. It was originally in black and white, stuff like that. But something about it just looks unfinished or something to me, and that drives me nuts. I don't know.
Yeah, it just looks like something your fucking stoner buddy in high school drew on his Trapper Keeper.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's why I dig it, man. I like that.
I mean,
And, like, I kind of feel like everything
Trapper Keeper.
Yeah. Actually, there's something
Check out
about
this
Ty that
modern dude.
I assume that, I mean, everything is kind of well thought out with him, maybe, and he wanted it to feel like that. He wanted it to feel a little bit more raw and amateurish, maybe feel like a band getting together in the garage, and maybe this was the part of that concept to him.
Yeah, because they were already all pretty well established at this point. So maybe, he kind of leaned into that, like, we're just fucking 3 17-year-olds just starting out.
Yeah, I think that's kind of what I'm assuming here, is that maybe he leaned into it a little. But anyway, thought that was interesting.
Did the same artist do the Fuzz 2 album? Because that album has another really kind of, I would say, more impressive artwork, black and white.
She might have. She did the artwork for Slaughterhouse.
I think it probably is
record, and
I like that album cover.
Slaughterhouse one looks a lot like the Fuzz 2 album cover, if I remember correctly.
Yeah,
so
the Fuzz
probably did.
Yeah, it's got a lot going on, a lot of depth, a lot of like psychedelic images as well. But
yeah,
if I had a van, which someday I hope to, I would paint the first album cover on the side.
Yeah, that looks like a van image. That would be a sweet van painting.
You just got a van, and I want to put a wizard on the side so bad.
Hell yeah.
That's funny.
No.
What color's your van?
It's just white right now.
That can't be
possible. I just don't want to look like a band out there,
White van vibes. Mm.
It was an old cop van too, so we're gonna do the.
I
exact
saw your
opposite
post. Yeah,
thing with it.
that's great.
Nice.
Wicked.
All right. Any final thoughts on this one?
I can get behind it. There's a lot of good energies in it and some really great grooves and riffs. I'm not a heavy, serious listener of a lot of things. Music is enjoyment for me. Take it, I'm a chick or whatever, but I take the good fun out of this sound. And to those naysayers, we know who you are. It's okay. You don't have to like it. I'll like it for you.
Yeah.
That's kind of funny that it's the Fuzz Club. So I don't know if that had anything to do with this pick. Did you pick it, Kris? Is this your pick?
I picked it, yeah.
Okay, yeah. But
I mean, that has a big part of why I even listened to it years ago, back in the day, because I was like getting into like fuzzy music, and I heard it being referred to as like fuzz rock instead of like stoner rock and stuff at the time. And I was like, well, this one's got to be amazing because it's just called Fuzz. This has to be like the best.
and it's not even as fuzzy as like the fuzz bands you think of either.
Yeah.
It's more garagey kind of punk psych sound.
Right.
It's a weird combination of like that 60s, late 60s, early 70s when like fuzz first really became a thing with kind of like some like the OC's vibes and weird like 80s reggae ska punk from the UK. It's such a weird eclectic mix, and 10, 15 years ago, I probably wouldn't have enjoyed this as much as I did. And I didn't love it. I'm not going to sit here and say I loved it, but I was able to enjoy it just for what it was a little bit, even though there was some things I didn't enjoy about it. And the lyrics they're not the lyrics, but the vocals were a little obnoxious at times. And some shit felt derivative, but sometimes you just sit there and you can watch a movie and it doesn't have to blow your fucking mind. You can just enjoy the movie.
Just enjoy it for what it is.
You just put it on and it's just good riffs.
Yeah. For those that have listened to Fuzz, I mean, how does this compare to Fuzz 2 and 3? Do you remember? It's been a while since I've listened to 2.
I haven't listened. Like I said, mine, I knew the only thing I even recognized was that What's in My Head song. So I'm not familiar with any of this.
Yeah. I remember being excited when 3 finally came out because I think it had been a while. And then I don't remember being blown away by it. I must not have been because I don't even remember what's on it.
Production on it. I think Steve Albini produced that one, recorded and produced it, or engineered or mixed it or whatever. So I think it's got a way different sound, where this one's like the first 2 are very full and fat, lots of lows and low mids. The third one is thinner sounding and kind of more straight, like you're in the room with the band rather than it's produced.
Yeah.
So that's a huge difference for me. I'm a huge fan of the first one. I don't mind the second 2 after that, but the first one, every time I put it on, I love it just as much.
Yeah, that's kind of the way I remember it as well. Just loving this.
I read something about that and said like it had like the most 70s vibe on the recording, and probably relates to what you're saying, where it's a little less modern sounding and a little more like you're just in the room with them.
Yeah.
Was the second one? I don't think I've heard the third one, but I thought I remember the second one being a little more like verging into like the neo psychedelia realm than the first, like not less 70s, more like trippiness and like more folk territory. But like it's been a while since I listened.
A couple times, like when it first came out, so I don't even really know, to be honest.
I can't remember. I think I heard the second album first, though. Like, to be honest, I think when the Fuzz 2 album came out is when I first heard about Fuzz. So, and then I went.
Fuzz 3 came out in 2020, so pretty recent, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, and I wasn't excited enough to go check it out. So
I think that I was actually pretty excited. I don't remember even what it sounds like. So it must.
And it's got a pretty lame album cover, just 3 dudes.
I don't get it.
Yeah, isn't that crazy? It's just a picture of them compared to like these first 2 album covers. That's mind blowing that they were just like, let's just put our picture on the cover.
It's like one of them is not like the other, so it's the third album. Yeah. Obviously, is not like the first 2. So
yeah, I don't even get that decision. It seems really strange.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else about this one? Recommend it? No? Anybody? To anybody else? Yeah.
Oh, you got to check it out. It's kind of a cult classic, really.
It kind of is. Yeah.
10 years
I'm glad I listened to it all the way through a few times and like really got to absorb it. Like I said, had I like checked this out when it came out, I probably wouldn't have enjoyed it as much. And it's not something I'm going to, I'm not buying the t-shirt right as soon as we get off of this, but like, I'll go check them out if they come to town, or I would recommend them to somebody that's into this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
You got to paint it on your van, man.
Oh, dude. That's what we got to do. I'm going to get some vinyl wraps. You got to recommend me a good guy, Bucky.
Yeah. Tattoo, to get the Fuzz tattoo. Anybody?
Yeah, dude. Just come on over. I'll do them right now.
There you go. Rob will do it.
I'd probably recommend
it. Lefty, it'll come out perfect.
I'd recommend it to friends who's into stoner rock music, and if I was like having a bunch of people over here like want to entertain them for some fun, I'd put it on and have it in the background. But I don't think I'd seek it out and put it on myself.
It's probably a pretty decent like intro record to some of this kind of music. I mean, it's pretty accessible. It's pretty catchy for the most part. Maybe some of us that have been in this music for a long time, it's not for you guys, but maybe for someone that hasn't dipped their toe in, be a good album for them.
Yeah,
sure.
All right, well, let's wrap it up. Everybody tell us what you're up to coming up. Aawks, you want to lead us off?
All right, he's not going to say it, but tomorrow, Novidal has their album release party for Denaturing, which Kris is a part of. So he'll be playing tomorrow night here in Barrie. There is some really talented players all on there. So you've got punk-headed chick who's like so awesome. She's one of my close friends, Casey. And good old Kris. Then we've got Dan Allen of Indian Handcrafts and a million other creative ideas. And then we got Sean Alton, who's also one of the guys who leads all the graphics up in here for a lot of album and poster covers. So that's the biggest thing happening there. And then we're playing in Toronto on October 6th with a lot of cool dudes. Oh, it's going to come out after that. Shoot.
We got November 20th
Get the album.
in Hamilton, Ontario. We're going to be doing a show with some liquid light shows, live liquid light shows, spinning like oil and plates and stuff.
Nice.
Kind of fun.
Sweet.
Cool.
Yeah, looking forward to that. And then December, but we'll talk about that later.
Very cool.
Now we have band practice too.
Yeah, we're working on our second album.
Yeah.
Awesome. Bucky?
Yeah, so it's end of the month. By the time this comes out, the September due charts will be out, which will be next Friday from tomorrow. But just got back from
Friday
Ripple
when this
Fest.
comes out, right?
Yeah, it'd be last Friday when this comes out.
Yeah.
So just got back, met you and Blake down at Ripple Fest. That was pretty cool.
That was awesome.
Got to see a bunch of folks. So yeah,
Cool.
that's about
Rob?
it.
Hashtronaut coming up. We got a show coming up with Restless Spirit in Fort Collins. Those guys are rad, sweet magnetic eye artists. And then we're doing a little run in the end of October with our buddies Heave from Albuquerque. I don't know if you guys know who they are, but we're doing a little run with them, the 18, 19, 20th, I think, a little weekend dad run. But yeah, that's about it. Foul Sounds, we just dropped the Box Cutter, a collaboration with Zach from Fuzzed Drones. I think there is still probably going to be a couple of those left by the time this comes out, so go check those out too.
Right on. Eddie?
The analyst is working on some details for the album release right now, and there should be some announcements come up soon. And just working on finishing off some music for the next albums for Low Talk and Aawks.
Right on. Cool. All right. Thanks, everybody. Go check out Fuzz. Later.
It's called Fuzz.